Very interesting. So we're on Zion Amud Beis. I don't realize how far we've gotten. Not even realizing it. 6 lines down in the wide lines. Kiyoser of Dimi Amar. Kiyoser of Dimi Amar. Darish Rav Nachman bar Kayin. Rav Nachman bar Kayin said, "My dichsev melech b'mishpat yamid aretz." The king in his judgment stands up the world. He creates the world. Ish terumos yaharsena. And a person who takes gifts, he destroys it. What does that mean? If a king, if a judge is like a king, he doesn't need anything. Yamid aretz. That will be the foundation of the world. But if he's like a kohen, that he has to go around getting gifts, he goes around to get the trumas, yarsena, he will destroy it, which is, a judge has to be incorruptible. If he's someone who's very needy, who wants a lot of things, and he always is looking to benefit himself, he's not going to be a good judge. He's going to be too much. Even if he doesn't take direct bribery, if a person is needy, he's easier to manipulate. But a judge who's like a king, who is lordly and says, "This is my court, and everything goes my way, and I don't care who you are," obviously that's better. He's gonna. That's what's needed for judgment. The Beit Nasiya Ukmadain Delay Habigaber, the house of the Nasi, it's in Eretz Yisrael, placed a dayan. They appointed a dayan that was not learned. He didn't know halachas. Amla Yehuda bar Nachmeni Meturgamina de Reish Lakish. They asked Yehuda bar Nachmeni, who was the Meturgam, he was the interpreter of Reish Lakish. Means Reish Lakish used to tell him what to say, and he would say it out loud. It was like they didn't have loudspeakers, so he was the human loudspeaker. But you have to know something in order to do that, right? Because he wasn't saying it over word for word. He was saying, Rish Lakish would tell him what to say, and he would paraphrase it. So they told him, "Kum aleh ba'mayra, go to this judge who doesn't know the halacha, and you speak for him. Come gachan aleha." So he bent down, the Meturgaman, Yehuda bar Nachmani, went to this judge and asked, he bent over them to hear what he had to say. He had nothing to say for himself. He was mamish mute. He was so dumb and literally that he couldn't say anything. Pasach v'yamar, so this Meturgam got up and said, "Hay amar le'etz hakitza. Hay, it's a gewalt. Oim le'etz hakitza, can you tell wood to speak? Uri le'evan daimim, can you wake up a stone that is unable to, that is mute? Hu yaira, can he paskin halachas? Can he teach anything? He knew tipish zav v'kesef b'chol ruach ein b'kirbay. Tafas, it's made, even if it's covered with gold and silver, the wood and the stone can't say anything, and they can't teach anything. They're made out of, even if they're covered with silver and gold, there's no ruach in them. There's no breath in them. So he was basically, this judge who didn't know what to say. He was digging. This Meturgim was digging at him. He said over a pasuk that talks about how someone who is or something, an inanimate object, is incapable of teaching. So he's saying the guy who's supposedly supposed to be the judge and tell me what to say, he doesn't know anything, and therefore he can't teach anything. The Rebbe Shalom is going to get the exact a price from those who appoint such dayanim. The Rebbe Shalom is in his heichal kachay has upon of kol haaretz, and from there he sees the whole world. It means the pasuk continues and says the Rebbe Shalom will stay in his heichal kachay. He's not going to descend down. He's because of these people. Amrish Lakish, kalamai medayit she'ena hagen. Whoever appoints a judge that's not appropriate, it's as if he planted a tree that's intended for avodah zarah amongst the Yidden. The pasuk says you should appoint judges. You shouldn't plant a asherah tree, a tree of Avodah Zarah. If it's a place that there are Talmidei Chacham, meaning there are people who would be appropriate judges, and instead you appoint someone for their political connections or because they'll pay you or whatever, and you choose someone who's not capable, it's not just as if you planted an Asherah tree, but as if you planted an Asherah tree by the Mizbeach. The pasuk says right after that you planted the Asherah opposite the Mizbeach. Ksiv, leisasan ite lekei kesef velekei zav. I'm saying elehei kesef elehei zav. Elehei kesef elehei zav hu delei avdi. Hadei shari. The Gemara asks, you're allowed to make. You can't make a avodah zarah of kesef zav, but you could make one of wood. What does that mean? Amravashi elahu haba b'shvil kesef elahu haba b'shvil zav. It's talking about a judge. We talk right. Elohim is a lashon of a judge. So it means a judge who comes because of gold and silver. He's someone who's a bought judge. Rav ki have asila beidina amar hachi. Rav, when he come to the bezin, he would say these words in order to remind himself to remain humble. Bira'ois nafsha liktala. I'm choosing to bring myself to the possibility of misa. If I paskin incorrectly, I'm going to be mechuyev misa. Nafik v'tzavi beisa, less who ovid. I'm going out and the work in my house is not getting done. V'reikin lebeisa ayil, and I'm going to come back to my house with nothing. Meaning I shouldn't expect to profit from. I'm not going to be able to do any work, and I'm going to be a judge, and I'm not going to get paid for it. Well, be a kiyitzia, and all I want when I do this is just that I shouldn't be any worse off when I come home than I was when I left. That means I'm not going to be nichshel and din and cause myself problems. So Rav, he used to say this just to remind himself that being a judge, even though you get to decide other people's fate, does not make you better, and you shouldn't expect to be compensated for it. When you would see groups of people following him, if they'll bring me up to Shamayim and covered, then I'll be destroyed like galalim, like waste. To remind himself that if you let yourself become a balgaiva, you're going to end up worse, because then you're going to think everything is in your hands and you're going to paskin incorrectly. When they would carry him, in order to, he was older and he couldn't go walk quickly, so they would carry him to say the drasha before Yom Tov. Amahachi, this is what he said. Riches don't last forever. And does a crown go from one generation to the next? It doesn't go. So don't think you're. Just to remind yourself not to think he's special. Darish bar kapar. Minoha milsa da amri rabban. Have a masunim bedin. You should be deliberate when you make a judgment. You shouldn't be quick. Think you jump to conclusions. The chsiv lesala b'malas. The Torah says you shouldn't go up on steps. It's really talking about when you go up to the mizbeach, it has to be a ramp and not steps. But we dash them. But near that it says v'samachlei ve'ela mishpatim. When it comes to mishpatim, you shouldn't go up on steps, which is like jumping from one thing to the next. Rather, you should go carefully and deliberately. You should think before you speak. Amr Eliezer, minayin l'dayin shel yifsa al roshei am kodesh. How do you know that a dayan should not step over people? Meaning, if he has to get to a spot, he shouldn't just jump over people, which can be show scorn for the people. Shenema lesala b'malis v'samach ve'ela mishpatim. Hidash is a little different. When you come to be a shayftim, you shouldn't step over people. Asher tosim, the pasuk continues. Asher tosim with name mishpatim asher tosim. Asher talamdim miboy. Instead of saying asher tosim, you should place. It should say you should teach. This is referring, Asher Tosim, is you should place before you the tools of the trade for Dayanim. What are those? Bring me my storekeepers, the tools of my trade. What are those? Makal, a stick for hitting people who need malchus, or a tzua for hitting people, the shofra and a shayfer for someone who has to be put in chayim, the sandala for chalitza. What was it? Makel, the Makas Mardus Achiach. Right, Ritzua is for Malchus, and Makel, when they would give Malchus the Rabbanon, they wouldn't use the strap that you would normally use for Malchus, they would use a stick. The Pasuk continues, I will give instructions to the Shaitim at the time of Yechon Kegegen Makel Ritzua to Hezaras. What it means to say is you should be very careful with this application of force. Not to do it too much or too little. You have to do it exactly, precisely calibrated. The pasuk continues, Shamua b'nechechem ushvatutam. You should listen to amongst the brothers and judge them. Amr Chanina, azhar lebezdin shlo yishma divrei baldin kaidim sheyaveh baldin chaverek. It's a warning that, and this is very strictly enforced in the secular courts also, that a judge cannot listen to one side without the other person being there. You can't have any ex parte communications. Is that what it's called? Yeah. You just have the judge go over to the judge and meet him in the bar and have a discussion about the case. And it's also, it's not just the judge applies to, it also applies to the parties that they can't try to meet the judge and tell him. That's why the pasuk says, not just Shamua b'nechechem, but that you shouldn't listen, but Shama, you shouldn't make your words heard. Rav Kahana Amar Mehacha, he says the same thing from a different pasuk, Loisisa, Loisasiya. Instead of Loisisa, you shouldn't place, Loisasiya, it shouldn't be placed, meaning just like the judge shouldn't be listening, be influenced by listening, it's also the party should not try to influence. First, you have to be certain of what the din is, clarify exactly what the din is, and then afterwards you paskin. The pasuk continues, issue bein achiv, you paskin between one man and his brother, uben geroi, between a ger. Rabbi Yehuda afilu ben bayis la'aliyah. The pasuk, the first part, bein issue bein achiv, is coming to tell you, even if a judge has to split up a house between one story and the next, which is generally pretty similar, he still has to be sure to get it exactly right, that there might have to be compensation if one of the two apartments, let's say there's two brothers who are splitting the Yerusha, and one gets the upstairs and one gets the downstairs, the judge has to be careful to calibrate to make sure that they're equal. And if not, there has to be compensation. Uben geroi, between a stranger, and Rabbi Yehuda, afilu bein tanu l'kirayim, he dashes ben geroi to the place where he lives, his residence. Ger means to reside. Even the kalim, if there's one gets a tan and one gets a karayim, he has to make sure it's equal. Sakiru pon ba mishpat. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, you shouldn't recognize people in mishpat. Yehuda Aimer le sakiru. You shouldn't, because you know someone, treat him better. You should recognize him and treat him better. He said the other way around also. If there's someone that you dislike, you shouldn't make him like a nachri, like a stranger, and give him a worse deal. Sounds very obvious, right? That you can't favor someone and then. Ushbezichna the Rav, the person who Rav used to stay by, their inn. Also the Kameladin, he came in front of him for Rav to paskin a din. Amaloi lav ushbezichniat. He said, aren't you the guy that I stayed by? Amaloi in. He said, yes. Amaloi dina itzli. So he said, what are you here for? Are you coming to use my services as a dayan? Amalei. So he said, Amalei dina isli, and I have a din. Amalei pasilna loch l'dina. He said, I can't paskin for you. I have a shaychus with you. I have to recuse myself from this din Torah. Amalei l'Rav Kahana. So Rav instead appointed Rav Kahana to paskin the din for this hotel keeper. Puk daina chadzi dahavaka gozbe. The Rav Kahana saw that Rav was close to this to this hotel keeper that he was talking to him. Amalei, itzaisa tzaisa. If you're going to agree to whatever I paskin, that's good. I'm going to get Rav out of here. Meaning, don't think that by endearing yourself to Rav, it's going to help you anything with me. You're going to listen to what I have to say. Rav is not going to overturn what I have to say, and it's going to be final. And don't expect any special treatment. Kagot and Kagadol Tishman should listen to both the Katan the same way you listen to a Gadol. It's coming to tell you that you shouldn't treat something, not just the people, but also a small claim should be treated with the same seriousness as a large one. Lamai Helchasa. What is the halacha? What is that telling you? That's pashut. Obviously, you can't. It doesn't make a difference the size of the halacha. The dayan it's incumbent on him to take it seriously, and he has to pass it correctly, regardless of the size of the issue. It's coming to tell you that you can't say this deal is $1 billion and this other guy is coming with $1,000, so we'll do first the $1 billion one, and afterwards we'll deal with the other guy with the small thing. No, whoever shows up first, they get treated first. You shouldn't be afraid of anyone. Because the judgment is Hashem's. The Rebbeinu Shalom, this is what we had before, that we said that a dayan has to realize that not only is the Rebbeinu Shalom there in the courtroom, but he also has to be aware that he's judging on the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom is almost as kilu a party. In what way? When we say Ki HaMishma Elokimu, because we say Rav Chanina says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Rebbeinu Shalom says it's not enough that the Rishayim that they take money from one person and give it to another, to the wrong person. It means a Rishayim, meaning a dayan who judges falsely. Then it becomes, the Rebbe says, it becomes my job to make good on what this dayan did. So you're basically, the dayan is forcing me, he's imposing a din on me that now I have to figure out how to get the money back to the proper person. Moshe Rabbeinu said, Moshe Rabbeinu said, this is continuing in the same sequence of psukim about Dayanim. So, Yisro came and he said, it's too much for you. And so they set up judges, and Moshe said, anything that's too difficult for the judges, you should bring to me. Moshe was punished for this, because it sounds almost ki'ilu, that Moshe was being arrogant. He's saying, I can handle anything. That in the end, Moshe had to go by B'nai Slavchad, and by the Mekosha, she had to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom for what the psak is. That was his punishment for saying, I can answer any questions. Did Moshe Rabbeinu say, I will tell you, Ushmativ, and we will hear? Except what he meant, it wasn't that Moshe Rabbeinu did anything wrong. All Moshe Rabbeinu was saying was, Igamirna gamirna. If I know the halacha, I'll tell you. Azel never gamirna, we'll go and learn it. So he said it wasn't a problem with Moshe, and that's why the Slavchad and the Mekoshes, he had to go ask a question. That was never his intention. Moshe's intention from the beginning was that he'll say the answer to the things that he knows, and whatever he doesn't, he'll go ask. It's like we learned in a brayso. Really, the parsha of B'nai Slavchad, about how the nachlas that we just had back in Baba Basra and Yesh Neuchlan, it should have been written by Moshe Rabbeinu l'chatchila, that a daughter can yarshin. B'nai Slavchad got the schus that it should be done through them. Nichtav al Yadan was written through the story that they asked a question and Moshe Rabbeinu asked. Because they were, I think the Gemara said, because they were so mechav of Eretz Yisrael, that they advocated for their Yerusha, so therefore they deserve the reward that there should be a parsha in the Torah.
You said what Nashim Sukanyas they were?
They were Nashim Sukanyas, but the specific Maisa Tzidkas, it wasn't like the parsha in the Torah for everyone who was a tzaddik, it was for this specific Tzidkas that they mechav of Eretz Yisrael. I think that's what Rashbam said. But strangely enough, Really, the parsha of the Mekayches, which is the proper misa to happen to someone who is Machal Shabbos, should have been really written on Moshe. It's not always a schus to have things written in the Torah about you. It means when you have a mitzvah written and you're involved, that's a good thing. But when there's getting killed for being Machal Shabbos, that is not a good thing. So rather than have Moshe Rabbeinu just did it, we had it about the Mekayshish because they were Machal Shabbos. Someone who's bad, the Rebbeinu Shalom makes things bad for him, and someone who's good, who deserves chuyas, who has chuyas, he gets the schus. It says, I will tell the shoftim, and it also says, I will tell you. What does that mean? It's a warning to the tzibur that they should listen to the dayanim. And it's an azhara for the dayan that they should be prepared to tolerate the public. That it's often difficult. You always have to keep in mind, the bottom have a very tough job. My uncle was tremendous paisik. He wrote the Badei Shulchan, and he would get so frustrated when people come ask him shalos and not think through the question. And it would just come out of the blue. Wherever he went, he'd be by chassan, he'd be walking on the street, people would come ask him questions, and they wouldn't try to think through exactly what the question was. But it's obviously you have to be receptive to questions also. So it's a very fine line. Ad kama, until how much? How much should a rav be prepared to tolerate? Amar of Chan and Vitamer of Shabtoi, Shayitza Amrit Hayonim. The same way you have to take care of an infant, a rav has to be almost infinitely patient with the questions. Ksiv ki atat savoi. That's the pasuk. Vayikra Moshe Yeshua v'yomelav le'enei kol Yisrael. Moshe called Yeshua and he said, "Chazak ve'emet, strengthen yourself. Ki atat tova yisam hazeh. You will come with this nation into Eretz Yisrael. Ksiv ki atat tova. You will bring them. Which one is it? Is he going amongst them, or is he going to the one who's going to bring them by himself? The first one is kiata savai, means you're going to come together with them. That's you together with the skenim. And the second one of kisavi means if they don't want to come, you hit them on the head, meaning you have to in some ways be a yachid. Davar echad ladar, ve'ein shnei davrim ladar. There has to be one leader. There can't be two leaders. We have to figure this out in Chaim Berlin. There's no two Rosh Hashivas for the first time. It's very controversial. Tana, zimun b'shloisha. Zimun is with shloisha. My zimun. What is zimun? Ilay me'bercha zimun. If you say it's talking about berchas hamazon, you have to have three for zimun for benching vatanya. Zimun ubercha zimun b'shloisha. That zimun and bercha zimun are b'shloisha. So obviously they're not the same thing. If we say zimun and bercha zimun, if you'll say bercha zimun is just explaining what zimun is, my zimun bercha zimun v'hatanya zimun b'shloisha bercha zimun b'shloisha. We have a different price which says even more explicitly the two separate things. Zimun is b'shloisha and bercha zimun. So that means two things. Elamai zimun azmuni l'din. It's talking about summoning someone to din. You have to have three dayanim, and it has to be written on the hazmana that all three of them are saying you have to come to. Kihada amarava, hani beit chlasa daini. These three dayanim, the yasi v'azal, shlicha de beidina v'amar mipuma dechad le'amar klum. If you have someone who's if you have three dayanim and they send someone to be mizamin someone, and the shliach says, the Reb Moshe said you have to come, even though there were three dayanim originally in the Din Torah, in the Bezdin. If the shliach only says from one person, the person doesn't have to listen. Until he says from all three of them. However, that's only if it's not on the day when the Bezdin is in session. If he says I'm coming from Reb Moshe, on the day that everyone knows where Moshe is sitting with Rabbi Yaakov and Rav Gutzman, so everyone knows that he's representing 3 dayanim, even though the shlich only said 1. The hazmana is chal, and if the person doesn't come, he's going to be capable of being put into chayrim. Tashlume kefil. We said in the Mishnah that Tashlume kefil needs 3 dayanim. Sholach Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda Rav Nachman bar Yaakov Lomdeinu Rabbeinu Dinei Knossos Bekama. How much is how many dayanim do you need for Dinei Knossos? We already said the kefil is b'shleisha. That's Knossos. He was asking if a yachid mumcha is sufficient for Knossos. The ein Dinei Knossos oiloi. Does it not? Can a yachid mumcha be done Dinei Knossos or not? Amalei tnisua. Right, we could deduce it from the Mishnah. Tashlume kefil, tashlume avachamisha, b'shloisha. There were 3. My shloisha, ilay mishloisha hadyotis. If you say it means shloisha hadyotis, amravu adavucha mishmei rav afilu asar vein hadyotis psulun dinei knossos. You can never have hadyotis doing dinei knossos. Ela mumchen. So the Mishnah must be coming to tell you that you need 3 mumchen. Look, Amar shloisha. That's 3, and it must be talking about mumcha because there's no such thing as a jaitis by knossos. So it must mean there's no such thing. You can't even have 1. You can't have 1 even if he's a mumcha. You have to have a minimum of 3 and all mumcha. So we're going to have a bunch of shitas about the din over here. We have a machlekes in the Mishnah. Right? In the Mishnah we had said, Hamaiti Shemer b'shloisha divrei Reb Meir. Reb Meir had said Hamaiti Shemer only needs 3. Chum say you need 23. Meshiyesh badin in nefashos. Now there's a bunch of components of Hamaiti Shemer. It's a very complicated topic, even though it's deceptively not so. Right? Hamaiti Shemer that the Torah talks about is a man who was makadosh and isha, and when it comes time for the nisuin, the day after the chasana, he says, and he goes to the father of the girl of the kala, and he says she's not a psula, and not only that, he claims that she was bo when she was after kedushin. So it's not just that she was not a psula, and therefore she's not entitled to the 200 zuz because I'm getting rid of her because I don't want to pay her ksuba at all. But he's also saying, she really is mechuyev misa. If she's born someone after kedushin, it's a real error. So the din is, if it turns out, if the father said such a thing, and then it turns out that he's lying, that she was a psula, and he has no proof to what he says, or Adam come and prove that what he said is false, so then he has to pay $100 to the father of the kala, and that's the din of Motzi Shema. That's the knas of Motzi Shema. Now, so on this, that's what they will be chaylik on. Now, clearly, if we're talking about the din of whether the girl, the kala, gets killed for being mizana, you obviously have to have 23. You need to have 23 for a din misa. But over here, we're not talking about that. No one is suggesting that Rameir is saying you only need 3 to kill someone. Everyone knows din nefashos is b'ba'asum v'shloisha. What he's saying is, we're going to see why is it. It's going to be machlokes. Many, I think at least 6 different shatim about why you would need 23, in spite of the fact that all he's saying is I'm potter from the ksuba, and the question is, should he have to? If it turns out he's lying, should he have to pay the money? It means if he just makes the assertion, and I'm claiming she was mizana, but I have no edim for that. So there's not going to be any misa if there's no edim. So all we're really talking about is mamadus. So that's going to be the question. Dr. Gemara, the Gemara asks, what does it make a difference that in theory there could be din nefashos if there were edim? Obviously, we're not talking about where we're actually being done whether she was mizana. We must be talking about where there are no edim for that. So why would the Chachamim say that you need 23 because of the potential for dinin nefashos here, but it's not practical. Amar Ula b'choishin lalaz kamefagi. Ula says because no, the reason why we want 23 is because we're hopeful that by publicizing the case, Adam will step forward and we'll be able to determine whether she was mizana. So therefore, we want to make a laws. We want to make a lot of publicity so that the Adam will step forward. So that's why we do it with 23. So that's what the machlokes is according to Ula. Meir says we're not interested in publicizing them. The Chachamim say you do. Rava says a different shot. No, we're not interested in trying to make it public so that Adam will step forward. We're talking about where the Adam come, where the father says that I have Adam, and therefore it's going to be a din in nefashos. And I'm sorry, not the father. The husband says it's din in nefashos. I have Adam, and now it turns out he is not able to provide. We're talking about where the husband said, "Hey, we need 23 because I have Adam." But it turns out he didn't find Adam, so therefore they're disbanding the din. He said, "Listen, it's true I don't have Adam, but I can still, if I claim that the halacha is an unansad that if he says he has nemanas because he wouldn't have made the whole chasana if he didn't really believe she was a psula. And so he wouldn't lie and now all of a sudden say, I'm kicking her out, unless it was really true. So he is able to claim that he doesn't have to pay the ksuba. That he is believed. So he wants to say, listen, I don't need a bezin of 23, but I should have at least a bezin of 3 to pata me from the ksuba. Okay, we'll have to continue tomorrow with the kasha on this. Good to be back.